The Miami Dolphins take on the Buffalo Bills this Sunday to try and take control of their season again, as they are 2-5 and looking to avoid 2-6. I'm going to start with the Dolphins offense versus the Bills defense. Obviously, the Dolphins offense finally got Tua back and they look a lot more like themselves. It looked like a good, clean operation. Obviously, outside of that fumbled snap that ultimately lost them that game. So I'm going to start with the Dolphins rushing attack versus the Bills rushing defense. The Dolphins are 9th in the league in rushing yards per game. The Bills are 15th in rushing yards allowed. And the Dolphins being at 9th in the league is huge. Obviously, we were one most of last year, but that was mainly inflated to a game or two. This run game that we've been providing these past few weeks is a lot more what I was hoping to see from McDaniel last year when we were struggling against good teams. Is under center. They know you're running the football and we still run it. We've had a lot of success running the football. Ultimately, the Bills have destroyed the Dolphins year in, year out. Regardless of what we do, they have had our number. But I think the key to beating the Bills offensively is to take what they give you. They're going to park two safeties back there and they're going to sit in nickel defense. They do it every single game. And yet the Dolphins find ways to beat themselves. So when a team is running nickel, so they're undersized when you run a heavier personnel, what you should do is try to run the football. And the Dolphins have done it a few times against the Bills, but then never stick with it. So the key is to stick to running the football. Show up in I form. Have Alec Ingold in there 30 plays this week and try and run it down their throats, because they're not going to switch out of nickel defense. They want to prevent explosive plays, which is obviously what the Dolphins are known for. And that's a lot of why we have struggled, is trying to be over aggressive, try and get a big play, and it turns into a negative play or a turnover. So if you stay on schedule, you run the football with effectiveness, that is the first step in beating the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, it's easier said than done. They have some studs along their defensive line, but ultimately, the key for the Dolphins rushing offense is to establish it early and keep going to that well. We obviously have 3 very good backs. Let them all eat. If they don't stop the run, just keep running it. I don't care if Tua throws the ball 6 times. I want to win the football game, and that's what ultimately this game boils down to. Now, the Dolphins passing offense versus the Bills passing defense. The Dolphins are 26th in passing yards per game. Bills are 13th in passing yards allowed. Obviously, Dolphins number is skewed by not having Tua for 4 games. The offense without Tua was completely incompetent, and we saw it be completely competent with Tua, which goes to show how good Tua is. Despite the disrespect people want to put on QB1, he is a dog. And once again, I mentioned it on the running segment, the Bills like to stay in too high coverage. So they have 2 safeties back there, try to limit the explosive play. The key to trying to beat that is just to take what the defense gives you. So if that's throwing the checkdowns, if that's throwing underneath, things of that nature. There are route concepts that are used to try and beat that coverage cell to get the ball to your good player. So do that. So get Tyreek the ball in open space. So if you want to run him underneath, if you got to motion him to get him out of their coverage designed to stop him specifically. Basically, try and get your guys the ball. You don't have to try and throw it over the top of their defense. Just try and do it within the timing of the play against the coverages that you know they're going to run. And a big part of why we lost week 2 against the Bills, a lot of what the scheme was drawn up to provide was there. It was just poor execution. Obviously, Tua's first interception was bounced right off a receiver's chest. His second interception, and that was the big one that I was calling for, he was a little over aggressive. We had open routes in the flat and he tried to force it to Robbie Chosen, who also kind of ran an iffy route. But he had a check down that if he hit, it's a 10-15 yard game. And that's what the Bills do. They don't want you letting up the big play. So what they're going to do is they're going to play everyone back and they're going to make you dink and dunk down the field, and they'll let you do it. You have to show that you're capable of having those long drives and to do it over and over again. And that's the key to beating them. So it's not being over aggressive. It's getting the ball to your playmakers within 5 to 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. If that means more screens, if that means running the football more effectively, and most importantly is to not get behind the chains, because that's when things go awry. When you have a false start or an illegal shift, things like that, that is how they beat you. They make you beat them. But most of the time, and as we've seen with the Dolphins, they self-implode and beat themselves with penalties, over-aggressive play, and things like that. But if they just play within themselves, they can win this football game. I think it starts with establishing the running game and then taking what they give you in the passing game. So if that means throwing the check down route that only gains 5 yards, so be it. Just keep the chains moving, and that's how they'll have success. In terms of players to watch for the Bills, the Bills are a phenomenally built team, and it's very funny. They don't have a lot of superstar players, but they're a well-oiled machine. They have a lot of high-quality players that aren't the biggest names. Obviously, Gregory Rousseau, their entire defensive line. So Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, Von Miller, Ed Oliver. Obviously, Von Miller and Ed Oliver are bigger names, but Von Miller is kind of past his prime, but he still can put up production. But AJ Epinesa and Greg Rousseau are perfect examples of, they're not superstar names in terms of league-wide, but they get the job done and are consistent down in, down out. They can stop the run, and they have some pass rushing upside. Teron Johnson, as we've If you watch any of my videos, he's one of the best nickel corners in all of football. And then their linebacker, Dorian Williams, has stepped up tremendously because of injury. And then Mar Hamlin's had himself some ball production as well. He's been very good for them. It doesn't matter if they get an injury. It doesn't matter if they lose someone in free agency. The next guy that steps up is just always good. It's impressive. A lot of credit to Sean McDermott and their scheme to kind of keep things simple but make it complex on offenses, and their guys are always ready to play. So as we know, the Bills are just a tough out and they're a very good team. Now on to the Bills offense versus the Dolphins defense. The Bills offense is 5th in points per game. Dolphins defense is 16th in points allowed. All things considered, isn't terrible for the Dolphins. The Bills rushing attack, they're 12th in rushing yards per game. The Dolphins are 16th in rushing yards allowed. That's one of the keys to this game, is to stop their running attack, because if they can run the ball down your throat, they will continue to do so. So just try and get that under wraps. I'm confident. Even when we played them last time, we held the running game pretty well, besides the one explosive play, which obviously you can't have that. But from a down in, down out perspective, the Dolphins were good. They just have to limit that explosive play, which a lot of the times have been because of bad linebacker play from David Long. So hopefully he gets that cleaned up, because the defensive line has been pretty good. Obviously, Zach Sealer hasn't practiced yet. Hopefully he's good for this game. I'm not hopeful of it. It's, I believe, a fractured orbital. So being without Zach Sealer is brutal, especially against a very good Bills team. But the rushing offense is very good. Obviously, down the goal line, they'll run it with Josh Allen, which gives them a numbers advantage when they have the quarterback who can also be a threat with the ball in his hands. So they're a very good team all around. The run game has been very good. In terms of the passing offense, they're 15th in passing yards per game. The Dolphins are 5th in passing yards allowed. They don't pass the ball unless they have to, and they have a lot of success on the ground. And then their passing offense is very similar to their defense, which, once again, is very funny. They don't have superstars on offense aside from Josh Allen. They just have a bunch of high-quality players that are where they're supposed to be within the timing of the play, and Josh Allen spreads the ball around. They don't have that Stephon Diggs issue where he's kind of being a diva. Whoever's open gets the ball. There's a well-operated team. They don't have a crazy talented receiver. Obviously, they acquired Amari Cooper, who's still getting acclimated to that offense, and they're probably hoping for that higher upside at that position, but they just have a lot of quality players, whether it's Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper, Dalton Knox, Dalton Kincaid. Like, they've got Dawson Knox, not Dalton, but they have a lot of very good players on their team, and they spread the ball around to whoever's open. So the key is to stop the run, keep Josh Allen contained. He's obviously going to make his plays, but don't let him, try and keep him within the pocket. Don't let him get out of the pocket, because that's when a lot of the bad things happen. And then just try and hold him to field goals, because ultimately they're a very good team. They're going to run the football. And once again, it's similar to how their defense plays, where they're not willing to let up the big play. Their offense is more than okay just dinking and dunking down the field, because they have so many different options to try and beat you. So whether it's running the football, running it with Allen, passing it to one of their many options. So they're going to make drives. Key is to try and limit them to field goals. So stop the run, contain Josh Allen, hold them to field goals. And I think that gives our offense the best chance to try and win this game for us. And some injuries to take note of. I mentioned Sealer. Peter Kohu likely going to be out. He's had a neck injury and hasn't practiced the last 4 practices. And then Javon Holland, I would say, is iffy. He suffered a knee injury, which doesn't seem to be too serious, but he didn't practice today. So something to keep an eye on. But players to watch for the Buffalo Bills, obviously Josh Allen. As much as we hate him, he's one of the best quarterbacks in all football. Extremely dynamic with his arm and his legs. James Cook, who's developed into one of the better running backs in the league. He can catch the ball, he can run the ball. Very good player. Their tight end duo of Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, both very good players who have receiving upside. And then the receivers of Amari Cooper, who's still getting acclimated, but a very good player. Keon Coleman, who is their first round pick or 33rd overall pick, who's starting to make some plays for them. Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel. Once again, they don't have world beaters at the position, but they have quality players that when their number is called on, they can step up and do their job. So once again, it's just a very good team. They're going to be very hard to beat. I mentioned this in a short form video I posted this week. I don't think the Dolphins are going to win this game. If they do, playoff hopes are back in line, because we go from 2-6 to 3-5. That's a big difference. You beat your division rival who's had your number. That starts the turning of the tide in the building. Like, all right, we're good, because the tape hasn't been that bad. It's just the Dolphins are just the slightest things that are holding us back. Obviously, being without Tua for those 4 games was brutal. But if they get to 3-5, beating the Bills, that's a huge boost of confidence for this team. And that goes to show you can beat anyone on your schedule that's coming up, because we have some tough teams that we're facing. But if we can beat the Bills, we can beat anyone. So if we win this game, the season's back on. If we lose, though, you season's over. You got to evaluate the trade deadline. And that's obviously, unfortunately, the most likely scenario just due to the unfortunate nature of the injury to Tua Tagovailoa. But my prediction for this game, I'm 27-15 lifetime, 4-3 on this year. I'm letting myself down. 4-3 isn't the best, but I'm still above 500. But my prediction is the Miami Dolphins lose 31-20. I said this the last time in my recap video after we played the Bills, where I picked the Dolphins to win. I can no longer pick the Dolphins to beat the Bills until they do it. They just have our number. Everything that can go wrong goes wrong against the Bills. They're a good team, and we self-implode most of those times. So it'd be funny. It would be very Dolphins-like when all the fans are starting to throw in the towel. I'm an optimistic of the fans. I believe in this coaching staff, whatever you want to say about that. But it would be the most Dolphins thing when like the hope and expectation is the lowest for them to finally beat the Bills. And I'd be all for it. If we get to 3-5 beating the Bills, we have a chance to make the playoffs and make a run. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But that's a big if. I don't necessarily, you saw my prediction. I don't think we're going to win. But comment your thoughts down below. I appreciate you guys for watching. Like and subscribe to help the channel grow. Until next time, fins up.